That's it.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our agenda for Committee of the Whole for Town of East Gwillimbury on Tuesday, October 17th, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time. Before moving forward with our agenda, we will observe a moment of silence for all affected by the current conflict in the Middle East and offer our condolences to all who have experienced the loss or injury of loved ones. We hope and pray that peace and harmony will prevail. Thank you. I will move to declaration of interest. Is there anyone at this point that would like to declare? Councillor Johns, thank you very much.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Two items that I just wanted to declare on. I previously declared on item H1. I am chairing that section. If it does come up about Centre Street revitalization, I will turn the chair back over to you and remove myself from that discussion. And then again, previously declared item I2 as it relates to the municipal service guidelines for the condominium developments. My mother and stepfather both live in one of the condos that this pertains to, and so I'll be removing myself from that discussion as well.
Thank you very much. We now have the land acknowledgement statement. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaty First Nations and other Indigenous peoples. And on behalf of Council, I thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as East Gwillimbury's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. I am going to move on to community announcements. We do have a few today. October 15th to October 21st is recognized as Local Government Week. The purpose is to increase public and youth awareness of the important role local governments have in our community. Our communications team have put together a week-long campaign being shared through our social media and the highlights staff and council. Thank you for your work on this. And October 16th to the 20th is Ontario Public Library Week. I take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank our dedicated, wonderful library staff who do a terrific job of providing programming and resources at our libraries. Thank you for all that you do. Are there any updates from members of council? Councillor Leahy, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Mayor. On Saturday, October the 21st, in the evening, starting at 6 p.m., there's several seatings for the North Union Community Group roast beef dinner. And it's an excellent dinner, so if others can come out, we suggest that you attend and enjoy. And also on the 21st in the evening at 8:30, there's another tour, because the first tour was sold out, of the Sharon Burying Grounds. And the Sharon Burying Grounds have spoken to us as a group during budget for last term, and so I'm looking forward to their lamplight tour to learn all about the stories of the history of East Gwillimbury at the Sharon Burying Grounds on Saturday evening.
Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I'm going to steal Councillor Carruthers' thunder, but this weekend is, since it's Public Libraries Week, there's the library's book sale. Friday evening is the early bird with a nominal price for admission, because that's when the selection is the best. And then on Saturday as well at the Welland Land Community Centre, amazing deals to be had, and all in support of the good work that our library does. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Just to add to that, they are still looking for donations, so if you're doing a cleanup in your house and you have some books to donate that are in good shape, please drop them off at the Welland Landing Library before Friday.
Thank you very much. Any other items from anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to remind the folks of Ward 3 that Councillor Leahy and myself, and along with you, Madam Mayor, are having a Coffee with Council open house on November 6th from 6 to 8 p.m., and it's at the Ross Family Complex. And you can come out, and if you have any issues that are on your mind about municipal politics or our town, please come out and share them with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? I'm not seeing one at this time, so we'll move along. We are at item E, and we do have a deputation today. Would staff be introducing, or will I?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can certainly introduce the first deputant. That would be Melissa Attard, making a deputation to committee regarding a residential sewer connection. You are more than welcome to join us at the podium. The mic is on.
Welcome. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of Council. My name is Melissa Attard, and I thank you for this opportunity to present my request for sewer allocation. My husband, Ryan Swirla, stood here in my place the summer of 2017 asking Council for allocation after numerous conversations and meetings initially starting way back in 2013. We still have had no success. In fact, at that time, it was stated that the town's reserve amounted to only 106 units. Currently, we are at 1,062 single detached equivalents. That's almost 1,000 more than what it was back then. Since 2017, there has been many subdivisions completed and new ones have started. Massive builds commenced, such as Sharon Corners Retirement Home and the Loblaw Distribution Facility. The math is just not adding up. Furthermore, I would like to emphasize that we live in a very unique position geographically. I hope you guys have received what I had submitted, and it actually shows that there is active development all around my home. And it is around my home and my two neighbors to the west. Allen Grove Avenue is directly behind us, and Carindale Square is to the east. We have municipal sewage all around us, excluding the fronts of our homes. I completely understand that I'm only a homeowner with very minimal financial gain on your behalf. However, I'm part of this community, and I've been asking for this service for a very long time. I will conclude this request by sincerely asking for priority and consideration when planning and granting our town's reserves to existing homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Just a mover, Councillor Leahy. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you for coming out and speaking to us.
Thank you.
We are at item F. Sorry, go ahead.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm not
Madam
used
Mayor.
to seeing them there.
Yeah, no problem.
Go ahead,
appreciate
please.
I appreciate the opportunity to come in via virtually. I didn't know if there was going to be any opportunities to speak prior to receiving the deputation, but I just did want to say that I met both Melissa and Ryan back in the fall campaign, and as I'm been knocking on doors and talking to residents, and some of their direct feedback has very much spurred my opinion on the allocation policy as it relates to having those handful of opportunities to be able to have residents utilize that water allocation. And so as we were going through that water allocation discussion, and I have brought forward to have a handful of units, I think I even suggested 10 at one point to be able to have to residents. these folks personify what I have been speaking to in our previous meetings. And I just wanted to acknowledge their positioning within the development, and nobody's asking for anything for free. They're very aware of the costs involved because those costs weren't paid for when they moved in, and they're very aware of that. And so I just wanted to put that on the table after Melissa's deputation about the fact that I'm hoping that we can meet that expectation within the new allocation policy that's coming forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually do recall Mr. Swirla's deputation, and I believe that there's a resolution on the books that had said at the time that we were going to wait until the UISS was ready. And so that's been an interesting journey that our community has been through, and Ms. Attard and Mr. Swirla have been here all along for that. My question was going to be to ask staff if, through you, Madam Mayor, if these residents have been advised about what would be involved in extending servicing to their properties, because as I understand it, even if there's a sewer drop right across the street, it's not an insignificant amount of money, and I just wanted to make sure that that had been communicated, if I may, through you, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Molinari, could you assist with this, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Back in 2017, there were discussions, fairly significant discussions on this matter, and those costs were put together and provided to council through a report. Those costs likely have gone up since that time, so there'd be inflation from 2017 to now, and I believe those costs were in the order of about $40,000, 40 to 50, somewhere in there, just for council's information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I'd like to echo Councillor Johns' comments, and he's been very vocal in ensuring that there is some allocation carved out in our proposed policy, and so I'm thankful that we've had the opportunity to hear from the residents who would be directly impacted by that. So I look forward to making sure that is enshrined in that policy when we adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
It's my understanding that we have a current allocation policy, and I just want to know what's in that current policy as far as residents hooking up.
I wonder why it's not working. Sorry. Through you, Madam Mayor, the policy does not specifically speak to that. It just speaks to sort of that council has the ability to prioritize. And as Councillor Carruthers or Councillor Roy DeClemente has mentioned, there is that sort of resolution on the books dating back to 2017. So just like to note that the policy under discussion currently is related to the municipal allocation reserve only. It's meant to supplement the existing allocation policy.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. Could I have we've done it? Okay, we're on our way then. So just so the residents know, there will be some discussion. I'm sure that you've listened to what's been taking place here, and you will be a part of it at some point. Thank you for coming out. Item F is presentation, a Fagan Chief Executive Officer, Community Living, and unfortunately,
Through you, Madam Mayor, there was a second deputation that was submitted outside of the regular deadline. That would be Jack Wong on behalf of Welland Land Development, making a deputation to committee with respect to item J3, which is Development Services Memo Update on Welland Land Development Inc. applications. Mr. Wong, if you could just come to the lectern, that would be great.
welcome. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and good afternoon, members of council. It's very excited to see you all here in person. Very excited to come back from this virtual world and see you all. My first in person in this Gwillimbury, so I'm very excited. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today, and I would like to provide a quick overview and context to council as relates to the Welland application that we have since commenced for a better part of over 3 years ago, and as relates to the Howard House relocation as well. First of all, as a quick introduction, my name is Jack Wong. I'm a principal at Malone Given Parsons. I am also the planning agent on behalf of Welland, who is the owner of the subject property located at the northwest corner of 2nd Concession Row and Green Lane within the Green Lane secondary plan area. There are a few points I'd like to highlight in my quick presentation today in terms of the background of the application and the owner. I guess first of all, I would like to say Welland is a supermarket grocery chain owner and operator, and they have existing 6 supermarkets here in the Greater Toronto area. They also own 2 supermarkets out in British Columbia in the Richmond district, which has been very successful in the last couple of decades in terms of their business model. And the applicant has acquired this property back in 2018. And there has been many and countless conversation and meetings with senior staff after the acquisition during 2019 with former CEO, Mr. Tom Webster, and former General Manager of Development Services, which is Marco Ramuno, and also Madam Mayor yourself in some of the early on conversation. And the idea there through this conversation is really get a better understanding in terms of what the town is looking for at this particular corner of the Green Lane secondary plan area. And a lot of the messages and conversation we have heard back then was there's ample opportunity for us to deliver some kind of a medical offices and retail space within this corner. At the time, there has been a lot of doctors and dentists professions who are looking for office space at the time where they don't, and probably a challenge to find some of those space here in this Welland area, and as a result, had gone to Newmarket and other municipalities within the York region. So our client, as an operator and owner of a supermarket, we really want to create that traction with the supermarket itself, along with the office and the retail component, to create that sort of first phase of the development at this particular intersection right across the GO Transit station. Since then, we have formalized an application to the town in the fall of 2019. So fast forward 3 years later is a 3-year anniversary for that application, which I'm happy to report to council. I think that application is really close to hopefully getting a recommendation report in front of you shortly. The objective, as I mentioned earlier, is really to create that sort of attraction and live, work, and shop idea within this corner of the secondary plan within Green Lane. And as part of the early on conversation, there has been dialogue about relocating that Howard House to the Sharon Temple land as well, as part of the idea that it was introduced by the town. And at the time, as I recall, there has been a desire to add additional space on the Sharon Temple lands. And we see there's an opportunity for this Howard House located on the subject property to be looked at and potentially relocate to the Sharon Temple so that they can add on the additional space and be built up on that as part of their operation going in the future. So along with the development application and the proposal that we have put forward back in 2019, there has been ongoing conversation with Sharon Temple representative in terms of what that relocation can be like and locally and how that can be done. And that conversation has still been going on today. So, we obviously, there's a lot of technical matters and conversation that went into that process as well. And in terms of where we're at today, we understand fairly recently there has been a grant being approved by the federal government to Sharon Temple, as I believe the amount is $750,000 to their operation and future operation through that funding program. But part of the condition required was to relocate and complete that project within a certain time frame. So there's some urgency that we have just recently learned from Sharon Temple Board as relates to the relocation aspect of the project. And at the same time, while we're trying to advance this development application as well, to really allow that entire relocation as well as the development proposal to be implemented on the ground as quickly as possible. There is a significant financial commitment that needs to be made as relates to the relocation project, and we're really hoping to bring that into fruition with some kind of a certainty on the development application proposal itself as well. So a lot of that has come to, I think, through a very good direction and path. We have also recently met with senior staff as well in terms of some of this relocation conversation and the status of the application, but more specifically relating to the request of the servicing allocation to the first phase of the development, specifically to the residential component. We felt strongly that in order to allow a grocery store and the office and the retail to be sustainable and viable, there needs to be an immediate residential component to support that. And that residential component, as we have indicated in our submission and the application, is accounts for approximately 134 units for the mid-rise apartment built form, which is again responding to some of the desire at the time. Talking with senior staff and council, there's a desire to have a different form of buildings other than traditional subdivision kind of development. So we really were trying to respond to that overall desire at this part of the secondary plan area. So in addition to the 134 apartment units, there is also 9 townhouse units associated with the first phase of the development. And in order to make this whole phase 1 work as a shop, live, and work kind of ideology, we have also included the local neighborhood park as part of this phase 1 of the development by providing immediate amenity opportunity for those going to be living here in the near future, hopefully, should this be considered and approved by council in the near future. So hopefully I provided a quick context and the overall chronology of this application as relates to this particular application, as well as the location aspect of the project that we've been having ongoing dialogue and conversation with the Sharon Temple Board. I'm happy to answer any questions and comments you may have as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions of the presenter? Go ahead, Councillor Clemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's my understanding that the conversations and discussions with the Sharon Temple Museum Society weren't just discussions, but that there was a memorandum of understanding, that there were financial undertakings, there was a site plan developed, and in fact, the only thing that was really delaying things was the question of how the site would be serviced, that it couldn't be relocated and be on septic. Because the Temperance Hall septic bed was too small. So that issue was addressed when the sewer line was put right past the site. And as I understood it, and as this council was told, there was a federal grant available, and that transfer of the house was imminent. And so I'm just wondering, we've got significant dollars on the table, and I believe it was an arrangement between yourselves and the STMS, that there's significant dollars on the table, and they're at risk now if that house isn't moved quickly. And so I'm just wondering what your timeline is to have that house relocated to the Sharon Temple grounds.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Roy de Clemente, you're absolutely right. There has been a lot of upfront work being done to the relocation aspect of the project since the commencements of the conversation, and even led to the site plan application for the Howard House relocation. My understanding is, yes, there has been an active site plan application submitted, currently being reviewed and circulated by staff. So our technical team has been working through that aspect with the Sharon Temple representative and the technical consulting team. In terms of the timing, we are hoping to really get this relocation project done as soon as we can. But there is a financial consideration from the applicant perspective, because at the time when the conversation about this relocation project started, we were looking at anywhere between $250,000 to $300,000 relocation in terms of the cost overall. And fast forward 3 years later, we're talking over $2 million just on the relocation aspect of it. Partly because this is a very specialized project. There's only a couple contractors, as far as I know, to the best of my knowledge, out there in terms of the relocation contractor that is qualified to do this type of work. So having some certainty in terms of a financing program through some form of a servicing allocation and approval in place is going to help the applicant tremendously in terms of getting their finance in order to allow the whole project to come all together. And certainly we're very eager to move along with all aspects of this project, including the relocation aspect of it. So hopefully that provides some context to your question, Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Go ahead,
Just
please.
further. Thank you. Just further to that, it's not lost on me while I recognize that this is an expensive proposition to move the house. The entire property is designated under the Ontario Heritage Act, and the value that would be unlocked in that land by simply moving that house off that land is more than commensurate with the effort and finances that would be required. So from my perspective, it makes a great deal of sense because you have a house on your property that you can't use your land unless you deal with that house. And we have a willing host and a willing partner in the Sharon Temple that would allow for them to have a win as well. And they've applied for a federal grant in good faith, understanding that this was going to be happening quite imminently. And obviously, as a not-for-profit, they have requirements from an operating perspective, and they need some certainty as far as being able to book events if their site's going to be under construction during their high season. So I feel the need to express that you're doing a great thing in helping out, and it's very much appreciated. But there's also a benefit to you as well. Thank you.
Councillor Johns, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I had a comment first and then a follow-up question to my comment. I did just want to say that I appreciate the investment in our community and identifying East Gwillimbury as a place for you to bring your business and a place to grow. And I think that this type of development, the fact I've been everybody knows about, I've been speaking from my chair about the opportunities and needs for commercial and quite frankly, a diversified tax base that'll help bring services. And I appreciate the fact that you just spoke about the medical office use as well. And I think that in this housing crisis that we have right now, the opportunity to be able to address our commercial and service needs, as well as supplement with additional housing is, it's a great project for East Gwillimbury. And so thank you. I will be fully in support of this, just as a point of clarification off my comments. From a question perspective, and I have been able to receive the baton passed by Councillor Roy DiClemente as serving as the liaison for the Sharon Temple, and Councillor Roy DiClemente did a tremendous amount of work leading up to the baton being passed to me. One of my questions relates to, you spoke about moving the Howard House. It is my, and I understand you're talking about the cost going up. I just want, as a point of clarification, it is not simply moving the house, but it is also the remedying of the house to make sure that it is, I will say, operational and fit for use. And so I just wanted to hear your comment in regard to that to make sure that we were speaking about the same thing.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Johns, that is absolutely correct as well. So the relocation is only one of the many aspects that we have been having conversation and regular meetings and dialogue with Sharon Temple Board. Once the house is being physically relocated, there will be a foundation work and renovation work inside the house to provide a condition and status that will allow the turnover of the property to Sharon Temple so that they can take on and use those space as operational. So there's a lot more technicality that goes into that aspect of the interior retrofitting of the Howard House once it's being located on the Sharon Temple lands. That is absolutely correct.
Great, thank you. And I just want to say thank you again. The fact that you are, I recognize that we address community needs through development charges, but the fact that you are undertaking this project in relation to the development, it really speaks to your commitment to the community as a whole. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Beijing?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I think it's important context for council and the members of the public to understand that this project, when it was first developed, had a number of community benefits as well as economic benefits associated with it, and would have been able to proceed through a plan of subdivision to be able to develop the property and sort of parcel off the Howard House. So the relocation of the Howard House was a suggestion that came from the municipality. It wasn't part of the original concept. So I think it's kind of understandable that initial sort of thoughts around what the scope and the cost associated with that project weren't fully realized because it wasn't necessarily part of the original vision. So I think as a result of staff turnover and the pandemic and myriad other issues, we've had some challenges around effective communication, but I think it is really important to look at this first and foremost as a comprehensive project. It's mixed use, as we've talked about recently quite a bit, whereby when there's a residential and a commercial or employment-related use, they typically need to move together in order for it to make financial sense for the developer. And in this case, there is the added community benefit of moving the Howard House, which we all recognize has some urgency attached to it, but I don't want to lose sight of the original intent of the project when it came forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I believe Councillor Johns wanted to move this presentation. Seeing no other questions, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. I'm sure that you will be hearing from members of staff very shortly, and we look forward to working with you on a long term on that very exciting project. Thank you. We are at item, I did call the vote, didn't I? Yeah, okay. Item F is a Fagan, Chief Executive Officer, Community Living, Central York, making a presentation to committee regarding community living, Central York service overview, and unfortunately, that presentation has been withdrawn. So we will look forward to having him come out to another meeting. I know that they're very busy in their project and they wanted to share with us going forward. I'm now down at item G, administration, and I'm just looking at the human resources update, e.g. you belong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With your permission, I'm going to turn it over to our Acting Director of Human Resources, Meeta Gandhi, who's going to provide you with the EGU Belong presentation.
Good afternoon. Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to provide Council with an update on the work that we're doing with EGU Belong. I was here in June, as promised, to give quarterly updates on the work that we're doing and the progress that we're making, and so I'm again here this fall to do the same. I first want to express my gratitude to the Human Resources team, Daniela Gray, Isabella Pelota, Liz Norwood, Aaron Smythe, and Chris McPherson. They are a dynamic team, and I am very privileged to work with them. I'm going to talk a little bit about the name change of Human Resources in a second, but that'll be like the ta-da moment towards the end of the presentation. Just who's tracking the slides? Oh, thank you, Andrew. Next slide, please. So you'll recall we presented back in June and earlier even in the year when we were developing the EGU Belong Employee Experience Strategy that we had 4 pillars that are key to this strategy. Your experience, and that is really how you feel about signing up and working for the town of East Gwillimbury. Your career, which is really essentially all of the components of supporting you through your career with the municipality. Team EG is really about how we all work together, and our commitment is about communication and recognizing people, and there's some elements there underlying all of these areas. Our modernization, they fit into all of these themes. Policy development, and I'll be talking about that in a moment, because they also fit into all of these themes, and equity, diversity, and inclusion, because just like the other two elements, they fit into all of these categories. Next slide, please. Our objective under the EGU Belong strategy is to create a safe workplace where everyone feels seen for their contributions, connected to their coworkers, supported, and proud of their work and the organization. I really hope that when people do think about the EGU Belong theme, that it is something that comes and rings true to them in everything that we do in our organization. Next slide, please. The last time I came here, we presented this slide, but the picture, the title page of our strategy didn't have a photo in it, and we've since done a photo op at a barbecue. And so now we're trying to promote this strategy through visuals. We have a banner we've used at barbecues and other internal events so that people can become more accustomed to the services or the approach that we're taking in our department and for the whole organization. Next slide, please. So I'll start with your experience component. A number of accomplishments since we were here in front of you before in June. We recognized the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. The photo that's accompanying this slide is a reflection of that. We organized and trained about 40 staff on de-escalation, customer service training, and that was through CAMH. We extended optional life insurance to staff, so if they were interested in an additional, I think it was $10,000, they were able to do that. We completed a part-time salary review, which haven't further shared the results of that because we're still trying to crunch the numbers and make sure everything is, all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. We drafted a multi-year accessibility plan, and I'll be coming to council, or the team will be coming to council in a couple of weeks, before the end of the year certainly, to share that with council because that needs to be approved by council legislatively. It's a legislative requirement. Maternity and parental leave budget request has been submitted. It's part of the 2024 budget request. We've done an analysis of which municipalities provide that top up, and we are making the same recommendation. We are in the process of looking at all of our policies. They haven't, in some cases, been looked at in many years. And so we are in the process of reviewing and updating all of these policies that are listed on the screen. And we've developed some health and safety orientation for council members. We will be on the topic of training, reaching out to council as a whole to see what interests council in terms of training and development so that we can be planned and precise about the training that's made available to council. And what's ahead, we have even more policies to review. So more to come on all of that. Your next slide, please. So under your career, we've developed a new performance management program called the Career Development Review Program. We're test piloting that with a couple of departments in the very near future, and we hope to have this launched by the end of December, early January, and that is going to be an annual process, and it will be aligned with the business plans that are presented to council as part of the budget process. So the business plans are presented, council will either approve or will make amendments to what is presented, the budgets will be allocated, and then staff essentially have a work plan. And now the career development review will be closely tied to that, so everybody knows what it is that they're expected to get done over the course of the year. And then also, of course, tied to that is the personal development and the training and development that will be needed for individuals. We're nearing completion on a digital onboarding form. Before we had a digital onboarding form that simply, the focus was IT, but now we're looking at having a one-stop shop where when a new employee is hired, the hiring manager will fill out a form, and then for example, finance will know if a P card is required, and the building facilities will know that a card needs to be created. IT will know that the individual is starting. HR will know. All of the people who need to know about the individual who's starting will know and will be able to take action accordingly. And the same will happen when a person leaves the organization. We don't have this in place right now, and we are going to be moving in that direction. And we just today launched a new employee orientation session. So this was the inaugural session where we brought together all of the new employees over the past year. And we're going to start doing this on a quarterly or semi-annually basis, depending on the numbers. But ideally, it'll be a quarterly. We're reaching out to anybody who participated today to get their feedback so that we can build an even better and more comprehensive session for next time. What's coming up? We have giving and receiving feedback training. I'm a true believer that if you're going to launch a new system, you have to make sure people are equipped with the skills that they need to do and adapt to the new system that they are using. So we have an external provider who's going to be coming in and supporting everybody who's in a supervisory role. So we have about 50 participants. And that training is going to start at the end of October and go through to December. We're launching the digital onboarding form, as I mentioned, and in a couple of weeks, we have Take Your Kids to Work Day. I believe it is in everybody's calendar on council and the senior management team, and more information will come on that shortly. Next slide, please. Under Team EG, I would suggest the leadership of the Emergency and Community Safety Services Department. Sorry, I'm going to go. I skipped that. We completed an Emergency and Community Safety Services review, and that is coming to council in November. And in collaboration with captains and the East Gwillimbury Professional Firefighters Association, we developed, and of course staff in ECSS and others, we developed an onboarding plan for new firefighters. And so, because we have three new firefighters in our organization. We have been working closely with CIES and CPRC and practices and approaches to make sure that we have a similar approach with both departments for things like on-call and meal allowances, and that work is ongoing. And support an ECS initiated an information session for staff and council, and that essentially was the session around housing and homelessness. I wasn't here that day, but I understand that was very well received and an excellent presentation, and I recognize the leadership from ECSS and staff to initiate that work. What's ahead? Some departmental name changes. So I think there's been some discussion about changing names. It started with the EG You Belong. Part of it was to change human resources to people and culture, and we've actually shifted from that slightly. I'll read out what we have planned, and there is planning to be an email to staff. The idea is to make changes where they make sense. So departments I don't name have not been changed, but there are some slight changes in others. So Emergency and Community Safety Services is going to be Fire and Emergency Services. Straightforward, simple, describes what the department does. Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services will now be Engineering and Public Works. You'll notice that the word community is being taken out of all of these titles. So again, simple, straight to the point. People know what people in that department do. CPRC, which is Community, Parks, Recreation, and Culture. We're dropping the community, and it will be Parks, Recreation, and Culture. Legal and Property Services will be Legal and Legislative Services, and that is because clerks will be moving out of corporate services and into that department. And so the new name change reflects both areas. Human Resources is also moving, as clerks moves out of corporate services, Human Resources is moving into corporate services. And we originally were going to call ourselves People and Culture, but seeing that culture was also being adopted in another, or being used in another area, we decided to make the leap and call it People and Belonging. And the reason why we're calling it Belonging is because it ties into the EG You Belong strategy very clearly. And it also speaks to the work that we do on equity, diversity, and inclusion, because that's ultimately the goal. So both internally and externally, we thought, let's just name it what we're trying to achieve. And I'm pretty proud of that. I'm looking forward to see how many people copy us, because I don't think there's a lot of organizations with that title. Anyway, all of that is going to take place over the next little while. It's not an easy transition to make those name changes. There's a lot of back-end work on the IT side and building names and signs and all of that. And so messages will be going out around the transition. We're hoping the full transition is made for January 1st, 2024. And if you have any questions on that, I'm happy to take them. The next slide. So Team EG working together, the number of full-time staff has stayed the same because this is what was council approved, 185, and approximately 140 part-time seasonal staff. The voluntary turnover rate has increased slightly to 5.1%. It was, when I was here in June, it was 4%. I know specifically that there are a couple of staff who have either chosen or have had to move because of living in this Greater Toronto area is a pretty expensive proposition, and so moving elsewhere is someplace that they needed to do, or for family reunification or other reasons. So we know why people are leaving for the most part. We also do exit interviews for anybody who is leaving, so if there's any other concerns or issues, we make sure we capture them and address them as much as possible. I'm not going to go through the list of all of these here because I'll save you from hearing me read all of these position titles, but these are just some highlights from the recruitment that we've done since June of 2023. So the numbers are fairly high. Overall, our recruitment efforts are ongoing and significant. Just to pick a few, we of course hired the 3 full-time firefighters. We've hired an aquatics and recreation supervisor. We've hired a community engagement and booking coordinator. A senior planner has been hired. All of these positions are certainly people are in them now. And then in contract positions, there's a number of new contract positions that have been hired over the last couple of months, basically over the summer. The next slide, just to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable to the council-approved budget. These are the positions that were approved for the 2023 budget. I provided an update, and this is a further update since then for all of the positions and the names of the individuals who are in them. And just moving to the last slide, our commitment is the 4th pillar of the EGU Belong employee experience strategy, where we focus on communication, rewards, and recognition. So we've now transformed our transition staff announcements to an ad hoc document, to something that is now at the beginning, as closely to the beginning of the month as possible. And what we envision is that becoming more of an employee newsletter. We are starting to put plans in place for that to happen. And what's ahead, we have the Years of Service Award. So now we actually have a date that's set for November 30th. There's a location that we have, and the name is escaping me, but it's at a golf course club, and it's a breakfast meeting. And so we hope that, I believe it's in all of members of council's calendars, and we look forward to you joining. That concludes my presentation. If anybody has any questions, I think I have a question slide at the end.
Thank you very much. A lot of material there. Very much appreciated. Questions? Councillor Roy DeClemente and then Councillor LaHaye.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The voluntary turnover rate seems quite low. Do you have you talk about people and belonging as your new department name, pardon me. What's your target for that? What's that metric in your mind? What's the ideal metric for you there?
Well, the Canada-wide voluntary turnover rate is 6.1%, so we're well below that. And the Ontario voluntary turnover rate is 7.4%, so we're well below that. The public administration turnover rate, that's taking into account municipal, provincial, federal, that's about 3.4%. So if we can move ourselves closer to the 3.4%, that would be great. Having lived 20 years of my life in the federal public service, people don't leave the federal public service ever. People were shocked when I said I'm out. But so, I can see why that number is low, because of historically people just don't leave the federal provincial public service. I don't know why, but that's the case, and that's what's contributing to the 3.4% rate.
Councillor LaHaye, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Gandhi, for that clear and thorough presentation. I appreciate that. I wanted to make a comment, which I'm looking forward to the name change for Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services, because it is quite a mouthful. And as the liaison for that department, I have to do a lot of explaining on what the department actually does. So I'm looking forward to a clearer name on that department of Engineering and Public Works, or even Public Works. I don't know how our general manager feels about it, but I'm looking forward to that change. And fewer words for me to say. The second point I wanted to make was an observation between the wellness component of You Belong and the fourth component, the commitment component, because I think they're connected. I believe very firmly that if employees feel that they're listened to, that they're being heard, and that will go a long way to feeling appreciated. And the feeling of appreciation and acknowledgement of the contributions that all employees are making is an important one, because I am aware that oftentimes, even more than compensation, just the sense of appreciation goes a long way in keeping a ship happy in terms of who's captaining it and all of the sailors on that ship. So thank you very much for that. And I look forward to more opportunities in the future to acknowledge the employees, both in the fire department as well as in the other staff members, with regular ongoing appreciation events in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, we are looking at developing a much more robust rewards and recognition program. We're starting this year with catching up of 4 years of service awards, and then eventually we're going to move our way, as the strategy indicates, that we're looking at implementing a rewards and recognition program into 2024 and 25. We'll have to try to balance all the other parts of what we're doing, but certainly years of service will continue on a more regular basis, and we are going to look for other opportunities for other enhanced levels of rewards and recognition. And in terms of the connection between the pillars, in fact, they're all connected. They don't stand alone. They very much work in concert with one another.
Go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, Ms. Gandhi's talking about rewards and recognition. Councillor Roy DeClemente was talking about retention rates and so on. And really all of that starts when you make the first impression when folks are onboarded. And I'm just wondering, because we had our first new and improved onboarding session this morning that Ms. Gandhi's team has put into place. I'm just wondering if she could just spend a minute just describing sort of the new onboarding program, and in particular the activity that was this morning that I thought was outstanding. But just if you could comment.
Certainly, through you, Madam Mayor. The first, the session we had, I think 20? Yes, I'm getting nods from the HR team. About 20 people registered for the onboarding program. It is new. It's something we've never done before, and it's sort of in two parts. The first part is about the organization and who we are and what we do, and we had all of members of the senior management team there who could speak to what they do, the organizational chart. There's a video we show about municipal government. I was in municipal government for a long time before I understood really how it works and how council works and what's the relationship between council and staff. And I wish I'd seen that video way long before I did. And then the second half gets into the details around pay and benefits and compensation and leave and all of those types of OMERs, all of those types of things. And so it's intentionally divided into two parts. Recognizes that on the first day, when you're kind of given all of the laundry list of things to know and learn, we don't remember any of it. I certainly don't. And so there's an opportunity for people to take a look at the material. There's a whole health and safety segment that's in the second half. And of course, this will evolve as we get feedback and people provide their input on what they found valuable and what they'd like to see more of or less of in the presentation going forward. But we do plan on having this on a regular basis. Going forward. It sets the stage for everything that's e.g. You Belong.
Councillor Johns, I believe you had a question?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and through you. I just wanted to say thank you to Ms. Gandhi and her team. I think that this department and the change that was needed, that was identified by this council at the beginning of our term as an area of opportunity for us. Whether this is, I'll say private sector or public sector, you have hit the ground running, and this work is not only thoughtful. Usually you can get thoughtful or you can get execution. Could be sloppy or could be disorganized, one or the other. But from what I've seen from sitting in my chair, you have not only been thoughtful, but your execution has come at a very high level. And so I just wanted to thank you and your department, because this was something that council identified, and you really hit the ground running with your arms wrapped around it, and your whole team has too. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Gandy, for your presentation. It's appreciated. There's an old saying that, you know, people are our greatest asset, and I would put a tweak on that and say it's our best people are our greatest asset, because not everyone, you know, in your words, belongs, and so sometimes it's hard to work through that in an organization, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing what you can to make sure that we have the right people that stick with us and you know, grow with us as an organization. It's never easy as leaders to have those difficult conversations. So I know you do a lot of coaching with leaders on that, and so that's important. One of the things we have is an employee assistance program, do we not?
Yes.
Does our provider give us any feedback on the use? Like, do they? I know they don't give us the names, but do they say, oh, the frequency of use is going up? Because it can be a good bellwether for what's going on in the team if there's anxiety or there's issues that they're dealing with. I'm just wondering if we ever get that sort of feedback. Certainly as leaders with the senior management team, that would be a great value to know if there's an uptick in people that are in distress.
We can get some data on that, I believe, and I will bring it to the next update that I bring to council.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. Councillor Crothers, would you move it?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Very insightful. Appreciate it. We are at our H, Councillor Johns in Finance.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So we've got one item, and looking for a mover to move the finance presentation to table it so we can speak to it for the 2024 proposed budget review. Do I have a mover for this presentation?
Councillor Crone has his
Councillor
hand up.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, Councillor Crone. And so with that, what I will do is I will turn it over to Mr. Marshall. I don't know if he wants to speak from there. He's moving. Going to the podium. Good stuff.
So thank you, Mr. Chair and the members of committee. I'm joined today by our Director of Finance and Deputy Treasurer Valerie Adema, and we're here to present to you the preview of the 2024 budget. It may seem like we've just finished one and we're into another, and it is true actually, because this will be the second budget that we'll be doing this year. So fasten your seatbelts and we're ready to go. So in this, if you go to the next slide, please. So in this presentation, we're going to provide a summary of what we've done to date to get us to this point in time, and then provide you with a summary of the proposal for the 2024 budget. Next slide, please. So this shows the framework that we're following in order to implement the town's strategic plan. So council approved the four-year plan earlier this year, and now we're going through the process of outlining what we plan to do to implement and deliver council's priorities, and to assign resourcing to make sure that we can implement these priorities. So once the business plan and budget are finalized, this will get filtered through to departmental and individual work plans. Next slide, please. So staff started this, this part of the process back in July when, with developing business plan priorities and looking at the resourcing required to deliver those priorities. We've gone through staff meetings, departmental reviews, extended management team reviews, SMT reviews, and CAO reviews to get to this point as well. And this year at Council's request, the business plan priorities were separated and from the budget and were adopted in principle in September of this year. So now we're going to be going through the budget process to make sure that we can assign the resourcing appropriately. Next slide, please. So the town is starting the 2024 budget process with a strong financial base. We've been building reserves to provide for our future needs. We're one of the few municipalities in York Region and in Ontario that are debt-free. We've been carving out tax room to mitigate the impact of providing new services to our taxpayers. And we've done all this while having the lowest relative taxes in York Region. Next slide, please. So new assessment is key in funding growth-related budget pressures. And so in East Gwillimbury, we've been fortunate to have healthy assessment growth over the past several years. So after, you can see after the spike in 2016 to 2018, assessment growth has remained steady at around 3 to 4% per year, and which is one of the highest rates of assessment growth in York Region. Next slide, please. So while developing the budget, one of the principles that we've been trying to achieve over the last several years is to align our tax increases on our base programs and services with the rate of inflation. So this graph compares the tax increases on the base programs with the rate of inflation for each year. And what's interesting is from 2018 to 2023, inflation went up by 18.8%. However, our increase on our base programs and services went up 5.9%. So we have not been keeping pace with inflation. And in fact, for 2 years during the pandemic, we passed 0% increases on our base programs. So we were able to do this by delaying and deferring certain expenditures such as staffing. And our modernization program has enabled us to do more with less. And we've been able to leverage grant funding to help us deliver that modernization program, which reduces the impact on taxes. So we did have good justification for having those low increases during the pandemic. However, keeping taxes low for a long period of time and not keeping pace with inflation, eventually that will have an impact on future years. And as you can see in 2024, the proposed increase on our base programs and services is higher than what inflation is averaging for this year. Next slide, please. So you've seen versions of this slide before. So this slide compares the relative taxes on a typical two-story detached dwelling in York Region. And once again, East Gwillimbury has come in at the lowest relative taxes within the municipalities in York Region. We're 15% lower than the next lowest municipality, which is about a $600 difference. And we're 25% lower than the average York Region, which is about $1,000. Next slide, please. So taxes are one of the major things that a municipality charges its residents. The other thing is water and wastewater servicing. So although East Gwillimbury is on the higher end in terms of water and wastewater costs. When you combine the taxes with the water and wastewater costs, we're still 7% less than the next lowest municipality, which works out to about $400 difference. And we're 14% less than the average in York Region, which is about an $800 difference. So, next slide, please. So there are several primary factors or business drivers that impact the development of the budget. So these include the cost of maintaining existing programs and services, which we refer to as our base program. Service level changes, which reflect the cost of new, increased, or enhanced services being provided. So for example, providing a new aquatics facility would be a service level enhancement. Growth pressures, I refer to the cost of providing the same level of service for an increased population. So an example of that would be providing garbage collection for new residents. We're providing the same level of service, but for more people. And legislation, these are things that are basically imposed on the town that we don't have much choice on, but they do have a budgetary impact. So for example, the More Homes Built Faster Act has an impact on our finances, which we have to adjust for, and as well the asset management program, we have to have a plan for that, and that will have an impact on our budget as well. So these are all impacted by social, economic, and environmental conditions. So examples of that would be the pandemic that just happened, that changed the way that we delivered services and had a budget impact, and inflation, which impacts all these costs as well. Next slide, please. So our proposed budget submission for 2024 have expenditures totaling $73 million. That consists of tax-supported operating costs of about $31.5 million, our development and fee-supported costs of $5.1 million, our capital request of $25.3 million, and our water and wastewater costs will be tabling those in December. So this just reflects what was approved last year. So that will be updated later on. So before I pass the presentation on to Ms. Adima, I'm happy to answer any questions on what was just presented.
Thank you very
Does
much.
Does the committee have any questions for Mr. Marshall? Seeing none, happy to turn it back to you, Mr. Marshall, and then we can take questions further.
Lower the mic to my height. Good afternoon, members of committee. Next slide, please. So the total pressure on the budget this year is approximately $3.4 million before we take into account the in-year assessment growth and other revenue that may be available. The presentation of the 2024 estimated cost impacts has changed slightly from previous years, where we have now included new staffing requests and dedicated tax increases all together on this slide. In the past, we presented these separately. These pressures can be summarized in three main areas. The first area of cost pressures comes from our base programs and services. Salaries and benefits account for approximately 2/3 of the town's tax-supported expenses. $1 million of the base pressure comes from this area. The amounts you see here include salary step and merit adjustments, benefit cost increases, an allowance for a cost of living increase for all staff, as well as an allowance for the upcoming collective agreement when it is finalized. We're also seeing approximately $100,000 of a net pressure in the base programs and services, with notable increases in staff training costs, audit fees, and consultants. Within the base program, there are also inflationary cost increases of approximately $100,000, specifically in our estimated insurance costs for 2024. There are areas here where we have been able to reduce costs by analyzing historical trends and trimming some budget categories to offset some of these increases. Legislative changes specifically related to development charges and OMERS participation also create a pressure on the base program of approximately $200,000. The second area where we see net cost pressures of approximately $800,000 is growth-related and modernization of services. These pressures include new staffing requests that total approximately $460,000, and I will go through those in details in an upcoming slide. Other cost pressures that relate to growth are increased legal costs, new training opportunities for staff to ensure skill levels are in line with the increased demands associated with a growing municipality and modernized systems, as well as additional software licensing costs. You will notice that some of these areas, such as training and bank fees, are duplicated between base pressures and growth categories, as they have impacts relating to both increasing costs as well as expanded volumes related to growth. The third area where we see cost pressures is under service level enhancements. This category accounts for the multi-year funding strategies for the expected future operating costs of the Health and Active Living Plaza, as well as dedicated contributions to the asset management reserves. Included within this category is also enhancements to the benefit programs of approximately $160,000. New staffing requests related to service level enhancements in the amount of approximately $480,000 make up the final component of the service level enhancement category of cost pressures. The funding strategies for these cost pressures also comes from three main areas. The first area is the in-year assessment growth. In 2024, this has grown slightly from past years and is expected to be approximately 1.1 million or 4%. The second area is a slight increase in revenues in our recreation user fees that will assist in offsetting some of the increased costs in this program. This is just under 100,000. The final area available to fund the cost pressures of the tax-supported program is through a tax levy increase. The current required increase for budget pressures is 7.7%, or approximately $2.2 million. This would equate to approximately $155 for the average household. Perhaps before moving to the next slide, I will pause for questions. That was a lot of information.
Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just looking at the item here you have listed under reduced revenue related to DC changes. I presume that's the Build More Homes Faster Act implications.
Yeah.
The 200,000 to me seems light. Is it intentionally that way, or have you factored in the offsets that the province would be giving us for hitting our targets, et cetera?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is just the budgeted revenue that was from DCs that is ineligible. So in some areas, we haven't booked the actuals to fund from DCs in the last couple of years, and we're just truing it up in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. Can you explain the OMERS voluntary participation? What is that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the OMERS legislation changed in 2023 and allowed participation in the OMERS fund for part-time and contract employees. So we didn't factor it into the 2023 budget until we could gauge the participation rate and get an actual true estimated cost. So that's where you see the 2024 impact.
Thank you.
Any other members of committee questions for, Councillor Leahy?
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair. At the beginning, you said that you gave a figure of $3.4 million pressure on the budget. And then at the end of the slide, you referenced $2.2 million, which equals $155 increase per average household. In the last budget, the first one that I worked on, a 1% tax increase was the equivalent of approximately $250,000. Is that correct? And so now that we're considering 2024, what would the current equivalent be for a 1% tax increase?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the current 1% tax levy for 2024 is $294,000, just under 300.
Any other questions from committee? Ms. Adima, you're good to move forward?
Next slide, please. As indicated on the previous slide, we have included the dedicated tax increases for the multi-year funding strategies that are in place in the overall budget pressure summary. 1% of a tax levy increase, as I just spoke about, is just under $300,000 of additional revenue. So that would be the amount contributing to each of these strategies for 2024. I will go into the multi-year funding plans in upcoming slides. Next slide. As with any growing organization, new resources are not always necessary to be added at the onset of a growth cycle. As transaction volumes build, systems are modernized, and staff look for ways to do more with less. At some point, though, we reach that tipping point where we find further efficiencies and managing the workloads with the same resource levels is no longer possible to keep up with the level of service our residents and businesses expect. It is at this point where new resources are required. This slide details the new staffing requests that relate to growth. The total cost column is a total operating cost, including salaries, benefits, and annual operating costs such as software licensing, training, and professional development costs. Where possible, funding offsets have been utilized to reduce the tax levy impact. Detailed staffing requests for each position will be included in your budget binders. However, the general managers and the director of HR are here today and can provide further details on any of these positions and workload pressures if necessary. I can pause for those questions before I move on.
Thanks, Ms. Adima. We have Councillor Carruthers with her hand up.
Thank you. It's been my feeling since I've been here is that we're not hiring enough new staff to keep up with the growth. So I'm very happy to see these positions on here. It would be very helpful to us, I think, if we could get a chart that shows the total residents versus total number of staff, so that we could have like a visual of how I have the impression that our staff is growing at this rate and the residents are growing at this rate. So if we can get a chart on that at a future presentation, I think that would be very helpful for us to see just how badly we need these new employees. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Carruthers. Any other questions for Ms. Adima on this slide from the committee? Seeing none?
Oh, no.
Oh, Councillor Leahy, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair. With regard to growth-related new staffing requests, and my understanding and the research I've been doing in preparation for the budget talks, I see that there's an omission here with regard to anyone in the fire department. And so if it is correct, I have been referencing other municipalities in terms of the research that I've been doing. And a statistic has been presented in other municipal council budget debates of one firefighter per 1,000 in terms of our population. I think it would be helpful if we also knew accurately what our population is, because it's not accurate on the signs that are on the sides of the roads. They're stuck back, it says 26,000 in terms of growth. So if we have a lot of growth-related new staffing, I think we need to know accurately what our population is, as well as my question about the required level of servicing from firefighters with regard to our population growth.
So, Councillor Roy DeClemente, please go ahead. I'm not sure if staff want to respond prior to the...
Councillor Johns, I'd like my question
Yep.
answered
Sure.
first. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Leahy, you actually had two questions. You're wondering what the population of our town is?
Yes.
And the second one is, yep, and then we'll go to the second one. So which staff member would like to answer the population question?
Through you,
And
Mr. Chair, I can take that. The estimated population currently is about 37,000. You are correct, there are multiple sources of population data, so we will confirm that and include it in the initial budget presentation in November.
Thank you. I think it's important to base our decisions on the facts, right? And the second question with regard to calculation in terms of requirements for firefighters according to the population?
Thank you, Chair, through you to Councillor Leahy. There is no hard, fast rule as to how many firefighters are required per population. We have approximately 80 firefighters in East Gwillimbury, and at this point, there's not a justifiable need. The facts and data don't indicate that we require additional firefighters at this point, additional full-time firefighters. I'll remind you that we are hiring 20 more paid-on-call staff.
Thank you, Chief.
I have a follow-up question.
Is there a follow-up?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. If we could have some more clarification on the data and what the requirements are. I understand that there's a difference between what the minimum requirements are and what the best practices are. So I'd be interested in having more data and understanding if there's a difference between when they say one firefighter per 1,000 population. Is that a full-time firefighter or is that a paid-on-call firefighter? I think it's important when we're talking about hiring and new staffing and growth needs that we have the facts to make decisions on.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to the Councillor. Fully intend to bring the data and the facts to the budget process.
Thank you both. Councillor Roy DiClemente, did you have a comment or question that you wanted to bring forward?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair. I think I'll save it for the budget process. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee on this as it pertains to the slide? Seeing none, Ms. Adim.
Next slide, please, Andrew. Staffing requests not only come from workload pressures to keep up with the growth, but in some cases, enhancing service levels is also a demand in a growing organization. In some of these cases, we have piloted programs and now need to formalize the positions that offer those enhanced service levels. And in other cases, there are new positions to assist the staff team in delivering service excellence. Again, detailed staffing requests will be included in your budget binders, and general managers and the director of HR can assist in providing further details if there are questions today. I can pause again if there are questions relating to this slide.
Any questions from committee? So I'm seeing none. I did have a couple comments on this slide, but I think I'm going to follow my ward councillor's lead here and save some of these comments for as we work through the process. But I do have some comments that I will bring forward as it pertains to the slide as we go through the process. So any other comments, questions on this slide from the committee? Seeing none, Ms. Adima.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next slide, please. In addition to the new staffing requests previously described, we are nearing the final planning stages of the Health and Active Living Plaza and its services. This slide shows the detailed staff requests that will happen for 2024, as well as the expected estimated hire date for each of these positions. The cost of these staff will be funded from the multi-year funding strategy contributions and will not have any additional tax levy impact. Detailed staffing requests for all of these positions will again be available in the budget binders. Happy to pause if there are any questions relating to these staffing requests.
Members of committee? Ms. Adima, back to you.
Next slide, please. In 2016, a multi-year funding strategy was created to begin to create tax room for each year to offset the requirement of a large tax levy increase required in the opening year of a new facility. It is estimated that the net operating costs of the Health and Active Living Plaza will be approximately $1.7 million. The current funding that has been previously dedicated is $1.1 million. This amount is already included in the base budget. There's approximately $526,000 remaining to fund before the opening of the Health and Active Living Plaza. This is the equivalent of a 1% dedicated tax increase over the next 2 years to reach the targeted operating cost. Next slide, please. As you are all aware, staff are currently working on asset management plans. Legislation requires that municipalities develop a financial strategy to fund the asset management needs by 2025. In the meantime, we must look at other measures to ensure we can keep pace with asset management needs. The first measure is to fund what we use on an annual basis. Amortization expense is one estimate of the use of these assets. So the first graph on the left side of this slide compares the annual amortization to the annual reserve contribution. When amortization is used as an estimate of the asset use, the current annual reserve contributions are not keeping pace. The second measure of asset management needs is to have enough in reserves to replace what we have already used. One estimate is to calculate this amount by using accumulated amortization. The second graph on the right side of the slide compares the town reserve balances against the accumulated amortization, or the amount of the assets that we have consumed. These factors indicate a need to increase asset management reserve contributions for tax-supported assets. A dedicated contribution to asset management began last year and is recommended to be included in the draft budget again for 2024. Next slide, please.
Mr. Chair, there is a question from a member of council.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and that was Councillor Carruthers. Thank you, sorry. The virtual world.
Yeah, no worries. So the 1% for asset management, is that coming out of the base or enhancement or separate?
Through you, Mr. Chair, 1% that was dedicated in 2023 would be included in the base. We're recommending a further 1% be added to that in 2024.
So the 7.7% we talked about higher, further back in the presentation, this would be 1% on top of that, so we're at 8, no?
No, and 7.7% includes the 1% dedicated.
Okay, I'm going to need to see that spelled out then.
Yep.
Thanks.
On the next slide. So in summary, the tax-supported budget for 2024 is proposed with an overall increase of 7.7% tax levy. This includes the dedicated tax increases for both the Health and Active Living Plaza and asset management, as well as all new staffing requests that have been presented. Based on 2016 assessed values, 1% equals approximately $20 to the average home value of $661,000, which means the proposed increase for 2024 is approximately equivalent to $155 per year for the average homeowner in East Gwillimbury. As noted on this slide, this increase is broken down between the three categories, as already discussed: base programs and services that include the inflationary and legislative pressures, growth-related pressures, and finally, service level enhancements. This budget allows for the existing programs and services with related growth to continue. It maintains a focus on modernization and transformation so that we can utilize technology to offer improved services and enhanced service levels to our residents. Next slide, please. The 2024 proposed...
Sorry, Ms. Adema, if we could, just before we go on, I see Councillor Roy D. Clemente. There you go, and I got another yellow wavy hand at me. There you go.
I thought I would use the tools in front of us for this. Anyway, thank you. I did have a question about this. I wanted some clarification here. So it's showing 4.9 increase on base programs and 4.2% service level enhancements, but a tax levy pressure of 7.7. That doesn't add up. Or maybe my math is wrong?
Nope.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, your math is not wrong.
Okay.
In your assessment growth is included in what is available to us for revenue, so it does not require a tax levy increase.
But I thought you were using, that was my second point, was 2.6% is growth-related pressures, which is offset by growth, by assessment growth. So I thought your assessment growth was being used to offset that 2.6.
It is, and there's is a remaining balance.
Okay, so I'm going to need some clarification on how that's being approached. In my opinion, I think that 2.6% and I think we need to take the assessment growth and use it separately and treat it separately, rather than simply saying, oh, we have these growth-related pressures, and how are we going to use our assessment growth, and we're just going to attach them. I think we have to make some more strategic decisions about how we spend our assessment growth and how it plays into the overall funding package for us. So that, I'd like to see some discussion about that. I don't think it's a one-to-one relationship. And frankly, I think we're going to have to sharpen our pencils, because I don't see us with a straight face being able to go to our constituents and suggesting that we're going to be raising taxes by 7.7%. That's just my initial reaction. Thank you.
If there are any other questions for committee, I just wanted to bounce off that one comment about going to residents with a straight face. We have a fiduciary responsibility sitting in these chairs. And I think that the beginning of the presentation, I think that year after year after year, delivering under inflation is poking his head up. The fact is that we are behind, and it is showing. I am going to sit here with a straight face, and I will be able to speak to residents. The fact is that there is a gap here. And we have a fiduciary responsibility to stare it in the face. And so I just wanted to rebut that comment. Councillor Leahy and then Councillor Carruthers, I see with their hands up.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I agree with that assessment, and the situation that we find ourselves in is that we're going to be having to make some very tough decisions. But as with the residents who are also grappling with inflation, who have to make tough choices about, and I know some who personally are not eating 3 meals a day, who can't send their children off to these programs that we will be providing with the tax-paying dollars because they cannot afford them and they can't afford to take vacations. And the desired staffing level of new staff hires that have been presented today indicate to me, if 2/3 of our entire budget are going towards salaries and benefits, we need to take a very careful look at how many people we are hiring and in what departments we're hiring them, because they may be desirable to have, but the town has been operating on in a very lean manner and keeping the town tax-free, debt-free, and not tax-free, debt-free. And I think that some serious choices will have to be made if the desire is to continue to keep the town debt-free. We can't have everything. We can't have our cake and eat it too. So we're going to have to make some tough decisions.
Councillor Carruthers, you had your hand up as well.
Thank you. I think we all agree, and I think it sort of goes without saying that we must keep taxes low. I think our track record shows that's what this council stands for. But also with our new strategic plan, our core purpose is to deliver value for tax dollars while providing quality services that the community wants and needs. So I think we need to keep that right up front when we're looking at the budget, that is our core purpose. Our residents rely on us for certain services and programs that we offer. The chart that shows that we have the lowest taxes in the region, from day one when I got here, I thought that was not necessarily a good news story, because it begs the question, what are the unintended consequences of that? What are our residents missing out on that other municipalities that have a larger tax base can provide for their residents? So I think we need to really look at that chart. And when we start talking about percentages, I think we have to be very careful with that, and we need to start talking about absolute dollars. So the $155, I think, is a good number to be looking at rather than percentages. I remember last year someone saying that whatever percent was on the table just didn't feel right, and we can't go by that. We have to go back to our core purpose of delivering these. What's it going to cost? Are these costs that are being presented to us by our staff, who have traditionally kept our taxes very low, are these justified? And we have to go line by line and find out what is justified, where can we cut, but looking at it as absolute dollars. Because if we raise by 7.7%, or even if we knocked it down to 5%, that's a very small amount compared to some of the municipalities higher up on that chart. If they raise theirs by 5%, they get a lot more money. So I think when we're the lowest municipality for taxes, that chart, it just shows it doesn't do us a service to be talking about percentages, because we're talking about a percent of a much smaller amount than our neighboring municipalities. So if we can try talking more in absolute dollars, I think it would make the discussion easier, and we won't keep falling behind. So I think each year that we show that chart, we're farther behind the next closest municipality, which is great. Nobody wants to pay more taxes, but what are our residents missing out? And I'm wondering if there's any way to do some sort of analysis of what other municipalities are getting. I know there's municipalities that are doing windrow clearing that we just don't have the money for. Or to Councillor Leahy's point about firefighters, all of these things cost money that other municipalities have that we don't have. So let's not fall farther behind, and let's look at absolute dollars when we're comparing to other municipalities and not just percentages, because it's not apples to apples.
Thank you, Councillor Carruthers. Is there any other members of committee that would like to speak? Seeing none, Ms. Adima?
Next slide, please. There we go. The 2024 proposed budget also includes the development and fee-supported budget. The detailed budget for these areas will be included in your budget binders for review. Each of these areas have an individual reserve account that is designed to manage the ebbs and flows of development activity. In 2024, we are seeing reduced revenue estimates in many areas. Strategies are in place for monitoring and managing those costs accordingly. Next slide, please. As Mr. Marshall indicated earlier, the proposed 2024 budget for water and wastewater will come forward in December. Details on those estimates and the water rates will be shared at that time. At this time, I will pass the presentation back to Mr. Marshall to review the capital program.
I'll readjust the mic. Sorry. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So as we had reported on in September, the town has about 140 projects that are open right now at a value of about $107 million that are currently active and that were approved in previous budgets. The main one which takes up the majority of that $107 million is the Health and Active Living Plaza. However, there are a few other significant projects that we've highlighted here that also impact that open capital listing that we have going. Next slide, please. So for 2024, we're proposing a new capital request of $25.3 million. Just to note that excludes any projects related to water and wastewater, which will be coming later on in December through the budget process. So a large part of the 2024 request is for repair and replacement of assets, which is why you see that the funding for 2024 is mainly from reserves. The majority of that is from asset management reserves. The 10-year capital program of $271.6 million is more of a growth-related forecast, which is reflected by the fact that about 60% of the program is funded from development charges. Next slide, please. So this is the same capital budget, but shown by department. And for 2024, CIS is going to be pretty busy. 70% of the funding of the program is for CIS infrastructure. The 10-year forecast, 80% of the program is for CIS and CPRC infrastructure as well. Next slide, please. So this slide highlights some of the key projects that have been requested for 2024. And it's interesting to note that 4 projects make up 15 million of the $25 million request. Those are the road rehab and bridge rehab programs and the 2 revitalization projects. Next slide, please. So for our next steps, we'll be trying to issue our binder for you for your reading pleasure next week. Remember last cycle we handed it out during the holiday break, which is probably a reason why our Christmas card contributions that we received from finance to finance was reduced, but so we've tried to avoid that this year and give you some time to review this, but not during the holidays. So we're also trying to be scheduling meetings with councillors. So if you had any individual questions on the budget submission, we'll be doing that the week of November 6th. And then we have 3 days of discussions booked for November 13th, 15th, and 22nd. And then on December 5th, we'll be tabling the water and wastewater budget. And hopefully, if everything goes well, we'll have a proposal for adoption of a budget on December 19th. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Thanks, Mr. Marshall. Councillor Leahy has her hand up. Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Marshall. It would be helpful to me if I could have a chart which shows the by department comparisons for the past 2 years and this year. So for example, you know, it said 1.0 million or 1 for the libraries or 1.3 or whatever it was on the previous slide. If you could have a chart that shows each of the departments year by year, what the increase or decrease is in the budget proposals.
So through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, the chart you're looking for, is that for the capital program or for the operating expenditures, or like?
If we can go back to the previous slide that had it with the pies and broken down
So
into the slices of the
capital
pies.
plans.
Yes, the capital,
So,
yeah.
so you'd like a comparison of 2023's capital versus 2024's capital?
Yes, I think 2022 might also be helpful, just to see
The
from
share.
year to year,
Okay.
whether it's going down in certain departments or up in certain departments.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, of the capital,
Okay.
by department. Thank you.
Any other questions from committee for Mr. Marshall?
Mr. Chair, I believe the CAO had his hand up. I don't believe you were able to see him.
No, Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, staff would be happy to bring back year versus year comparisons on the capital, but the context around that will be very important because it'll be project driven. So it'll just depend what were the priority capital projects in a given year. They might go up one year, they might go down a year. You might buy a vehicle one year, you don't buy it the next year. So I suspect just looking at the numbers will actually leave you with many more questions than answers. So if your real question is, or if the way we could be most helpful would be that we would provide you with a little bit of a sense of what the priorities were in, say, 22 versus 23 versus 24. Just on the capital, I just offer it as a friendly suggestion. It just might be more helpful than just looking at comparative numbers in total, which I think may leave you with more questions than answers.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Valcic, I think that would be helpful to have the context of the priorities year by year as well, not only for council members, but also for residents at large, so they understand what's going on. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Leahy. Councillor Roy DiClemente, do you have a question or comment for Mr. Marshall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I have found it, when sort of trying to get a handle on capital expenditures, I have found it helpful to refer to the chart that you usually include in your, we'll call it a trick-or-treat binder this time, in your binder, which looks at the 10-year capital forecasts. And so, you know, what I get a sense, because I have the history of what was approved previously, it's a good indicator of what large expenditures are coming down the pipe. So when do we need to replace a pumper truck, for example? When do we have to repair bridges? Those are the huge expenditures, right? So for me, that's helpful, and perhaps Councillor Leahy, we could have a slightly historic look as well. I don't know. I think for me, the open capital projects and that 10-year forecast really give me a good sense of what's happening on the capital side. And so I think that's a good tool as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just a couple of comments and reflections on some of the things I've been hearing over this last session. I think we're going to have a vigorous debate on this budget as we get forward. A lot of thoughts here. I like, you know, the comment from Councillor Carruthers on I'd really love to know how we stack up against other municipalities, not just, you know, on their financial metrics, but also on the other things. And it's, you know, about how many parks or community centers, or how do we benchmark ourselves against other communities? And I think that's probably a long-term wish list to how we, you know, how do we add value for tax dollars? But the other thing that I would suggest is that we all try to be mindful of. You know, I think sometimes we pick a number of what the tax rate wants to be, and then we try and work back and compress everything into that number. And I would suggest maybe we do it the opposite way and look at what we want to achieve, see where we end up, and then if we have to scale it back, we do that. I think trying to squeeze it into a number, I don't think we always get the best results. That's my impression from my 5 years here. But I'm looking forward to the debate, and thank you for your presentation. You've whetted our appetite for what is going to be a very busy month of November. So thank you.
Councillor Leahy again. You have your question, a question?
Yes, and a general observation. My question would be to everyone as we move forward during this process is with regard to the value for tax dollars, as Councillor Crone references, add on to that and consider the question, what is the value for tax dollars for all of the residents? Not just when we have to prioritize, we're going to have to do some serious decision-making. Prioritizing what the value for tax dollars are for all residents that affect the services of all residents, and not just certain portions of the residents who might access different aspects of our town, facilities or operations and services, but for value for tax dollars for all of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for committee? We had a comment about bridges from Councillor Roy DiClemente, and I think that's a good way to transition things. So we'll take the bridge and we'll look for a mover on the motion that be it resolved that the finance presentation dated October 17, 2023, entitled the 2024 Proposed Budget Review be received. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Foster.
Mr. Chair.
All those in.
Apologies. Your first mover was Councillor Crone, actually.
Oh, there we go, moving and shaking. There we go. Okay. And
So it's more of an
Councillor
off-ramp
Foster's-
than it is a bridge.
Yeah, I almost said off-ramp, but it didn't seem to work with my segue. I tried. I couldn't come up with something clever like trick-or-treating. There you go. Okay, so all those in favor? That's everyone. Good stuff. Okay, thank you, Mr. Marshall. Thank you. Is there anything further from the Finance Department? Do they want to speak to anything further?
Through you,
Seeing a
Mr.
head shake.
Nothing at this time, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? And seeing none. So with that, back to you, Madam Mayor, for the gavel.
Thank you very much. I have a suggestion of a 10-minute break at this point. I'm seeing nods. So with that, be back at 4 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you very much. We've had a busy afternoon already. And just looking at item 5. Aye, I'm sorry. Aye. Everyone can.
Madam Mayor, we're now under item I1, which is Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services with Councillor Leahy in the chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair. The first item on the agenda is CIES report, East Townline Bridge numbers 113 and 114, emergency measures update, the extension to design contract P2301, and Queensville Side Road Bridge number 110 update. And so could I have a mover for this, please? Thank you, Councillor Crone. And the report is moved by Councillor Crone. General Manager Molinari, do you have any comments on this?
Through you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to give a little bit of an update on the memo, and that is, or the report, and that the town's preparing for a number of bridge replacements over the next few years, and we're looking for some cost-effective solutions in order to extend the life of the existing infrastructure and defer costs where possible. In the case of bridges 113 and 114 on Townline Road, we were hoping to use modular bridges, and we spoke to council about that previously, and place those modular bridges on top of the existing piles, which would have provided us the ability to use some of that infrastructure and potentially get those bridges back in service very quickly and for a fairly reduced cost. So on that basis, and working with our consultant at the time, we issued and awarded an RFP to complete that work. And because there was some uncertainty, the first part of the assignment was to confirm the viability of that particular strategy. And upon closer assessment with our consultants, we determined that the existing bridge piles were not likely to have sufficient remaining service life in them for that approach. And also the extra annual maintenance associated with modular bridges was somewhat undesirable. So we're back to, we tried, but we're back to the conventional bridge approach as the best long-term solution. So as a result, we're seeking council's authorization to expand our existing design contract with Lee to complete a more robust design for a complete replacement of bridges 113 and 114. And that extra budget provides for full design of 2 conventional bridges, as well as the geotechnical work that goes along with it, and also the contract administration during construction. And happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from members of the committee? Yes, Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Mr. Molinari. Well, this will be welcome news, I know, to the residents out there that are having their commute disrupted. What do you estimate as the time of completion for these?
Through you, Madam Chair, we're hoping to get the design completed within the next few months, and we'll start construction as soon as we can. It's probably a start in 2024 with a completion somewhere in 25. It's difficult to know exactly until our design is complete, but that's kind of where we're thinking in terms of timelines on it right now.
Any other questions from members of committee? Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. It seems to me every time we turn around, we're replacing those bridges. And I'm just wondering, lifespan with them, has there been improvements that gives us more time with them than it has been in the past?
Through you, Madam Chair. Typical bridges will have a design service life somewhere 70, 80 years. So with a conventional bridge that we're proposing, that's what we're expecting going forward. Some of the timber bridges that we have provide some good service, but it's really hit and miss depending on the types of the loading that they get. You know, sometimes, you know, they don't have necessarily the same robust loading ability as some of the other conventional bridges. But they have served us well for a number of years, but unfortunately their time has come.
Thank you.
Any other committee members with questions? Seeing no further questions, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented? And the motion is carried. And General Manager Molinari, we'll move on to the next item, which is item number 2, which I believe Councillor Johns is sitting out from. And how's the weather in Florida, Councillor Johns?
I haven't had much of it.
Oh,
Working
okay.
away.
We're having pretty decent weather here too, but thank you for joining us in any case from virtually. So item number 2.
Haven't missed a meeting yet.
No. Item number 2 is the item that was deferred from September 19th, Committee of the Whole Council meeting, and it's regarding the municipal services guidelines for condominium developments. Can I have a mover for this, please? Thank you, Madam Mayor. And the report is moved by Mayor Hackson. General Manager Molinari, do you have any comments?
Through you, Madam Chair. Staff are recommending that the proposed guidelines be implemented for condominium developments town-wide when and where it's appropriate to do so. The guidelines propose to provide curbside waste collection services where the configuration of the site allows the use of the town standard vehicles in a safe and efficient manner. The guidelines also propose to assist condominiums with managing their year-round drinking water systems where the MECP requires them to do so. We'll point out to Council that it's our understanding that MECP currently has their requirements for that work on hold, and thus the service may no longer be required in the future, but it will be provided for in our guidelines in the event that it is necessary in the future. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members of committee? Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess just a comment more than anything, Mr. Molinari. We had a conversation, myself and some staff, regarding what's mentioned in this report of, possibly in the future using smaller garbage collection trucks, which would take us one step further to solving some of these problems. I'm not sure if you can comment on how that will move forward. My thought process being, not just a condominium where a smaller vehicle would be advantageous to us and the contract provider and possibly other municipalities. So is that something we're looking at, and how do we move forward with that, or does that wait until the next contract?
Through you, Madam Chair. That is something that we would look to implement as a provisional item in a future contract and determine what sort of pricing that comes in at and if that's something we'd want to move forward with. I guess at the end of the day, large garbage trucks are large so that they can be efficient for a large operation. And as a result, if you're using smaller vehicles, it does not blend well with an efficient operation. So there'd have to be enough critical mass for that collection in order for a smaller truck to be viable under that scenario. But that's always something that we can put out to the industry, and through our next contract, we can put that in as a provisional item and see what the costs come in at and whether or not they can the industry can provide that service with a smaller truck and do it efficiently. But we'd be happy to include that in that contract and see what the opportunities are.
Councillor Crowe?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to staff for this report. This report really, there's really two major components to it. That you have the policy, and then B, the situation we have with King's Landing, and I think we have to look at both, with a different lens. The history of this, when the board of King's Landing came to me a couple of years ago, there were three major issues. It was the water testing, the water meter reading, and then garbage collection. I think staff and the board worked well on resolving the water testing, and that's been a success story, so thank you for that. The meter reading, I think we've got a pretty good resolution of that. Not the way that we originally, King's Landing wanted, but I think financially it still works out to their benefit. So the last piece is being the garbage collection. And this is the tough nut to crack. I appreciate the public information session that was held about a week ago, and I think we had a good chat with the folks there. And Mr. Molinari, you and I, we both committed that that there was every problem has a resolution, and I think we had a good meeting with the board as well last week, and I think we're getting very close to a resolution. So I'm happy about that. I'm happy with the progress that we've been making. I think if we have the benefit of hindsight, we might have done that whole development differently to allow for the safe passage of a regular sized garbage truck. But anyway, we can't change the past, but we can try and make it the best of it we can. I think going forward, we're going to see more developments, condo developments, because of the lesser of the impact on our infrastructure. And with the new Building More Homes Faster Act, it puts a greater pressure on us with our infrastructure costs. So I can see condos becoming a very prevalent type of development for us. So we need to get going on that. I will probably be talking to staff in the days and weeks to come about how we can work to ensure that we don't duplicate this sort of situation where we're trying to fix it after the fact, and so we'll have some conversations about that. But given that I think we're close to having a resolution of this, and that we're going to make improvements, and I like what Councillor Foster's talking about. I think that's worthy of discussion down the road. So I'll be happy to support this policy after having me in your ear for about 2 years discussing this. I will be happy to support it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank staff for working so diligently and for listening to the residents, and I'm happy to see that this policy is before us. For me, again, here's the history lesson. That site was actually supposed to be an apartment building that was a condo. It was supposed to be a higher level. I think it was 6 stories on that one space, and that probably would have solved most of the issues that we're dealing with now if they had stuck with their original plan. So again, it came down to a developer looking to extract as much money and revenue as they could out of a piece of land, and unfortunately, we got stuck trying to fix things that didn't necessarily go as ideal as we would have liked. So unfortunately, I think the way that it is structured, with a condo being the way it is, it's private property, and just like a commercial endeavor needs to arrange for waste management, so too does an intense development such as a condo with narrower laneways. So I'm happy to support staff's initiative here and the policy, and I want to thank them for the work that they've done. I know it's been a long road and it's been a challenging one, and as we said earlier, I think it's important that we be mindful of this as we look at new applications as well. Thank you.
Would any other councillors like to make a comment or ask any questions? Seeing no further questions, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented? Very good. The motion is carried. And are there any other general questions from members of the committee under the CIES section of the agenda? And General Manager Molinari, do you have any further updates for the committee?
Nothing further at this time, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Then I will now pass the chair back to you, Mayor Hackson.
Thank you very much. We are on item J, Development Services. And I would ask Councillor Roy DeClemente to take the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have, I believe it's 3 items. Yes, it's 3 items on our agenda today. The first is a report regarding Kerbel Phase 3B, which is a removal of a holding provision for for a few units because they had their SDIP results come in. Madame Bégin, do you have anything further you'd like to add? Sorry, I keep saying Madame Bégin. Ms. Bégin.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. No, that was it. It's just this is a report recommending the lift of the hold because, as you mentioned, they did qualify through the Sustainable Development Incentive Program to be able to, which afforded them 16, the ability to develop 16 lots with this application.
Thank you. Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Foster. Any other questions from members of committee? Seeing none, all those in favor? Is that a finger, Councillor Johns? Yes, thank you. I saw half a finger, so that motion carries. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is an update from staff regarding the backyard hens survey. Ms. Bégin, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is really just for a member of committees and council's awareness that further to our discussions about amending the policy with respect to backyard hens, a survey has gone out, and once we gather the data from that survey, we'll report back to council and with some recommendations.
Thank you. May I have a mover? I need a mover first, and then we'll have discussion. Moved by Councillor Crone. Councillor Leahy, you had a question.
Yes, so the survey has already been issued to the public, or no? I have some questions about the questions that are asked on the survey. I wanted to give some feedback and some comments because I've been in discussion with, through you, Madam Chair. I've been in discussion with, through you, Madam Chair, to Ms. Bégin. I've been in discussion with several residents, some of whom already own backyard chickens, and they have properties of the size to accommodate what the current bylaws are, and others who would like to have backyard chickens. And so when I was reading through the questions that are going to be issued on the survey, I did have some concerns because I felt that one of them in particular, with regard to the negative aspects potentially of having backyard chickens, and they were listing noise and pests and different things, I felt that the questions themselves could be leading to a conclusion rather than being a more neutral questioning. So for example, in my discussions with residents, they have indicated to me that noise is not an issue because they're not roosters, they're hens, and hens don't, give a wake-up call at 5 a.m. in the mornings like roosters do. They also said that with proper feeding equipment that they don't have any issues with pests and rodents attracted to the food source. And then there's a further positive potential benefit, which is chickens eat ticks. And ticks are an issue in East Gwillimbury, as in many places. I often see on Facebook residents getting ticks from walking through our parks and on our trails, and as well as their dogs, etc. And so I think there are some positive aspects of having chickens, which the questions, the way they're worded on the survey, may not bring out a more unbiased questioning. So my concern is the wording of the questioning, and I might ask that we tweak that a bit before we issue it to the public. So that's my long question concern.
I don't know if it's a question, but it's certainly some feedback. Thank you, Councillor Leahy. And at this point, we're not here to debate the survey. We're simply here to receive the information. But I'm sure that staff will take that into account when they're finalizing the survey.
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair. The survey. We're planning to go live tomorrow. Communications is holding it until such time as we wanted to allow this opportunity to have feedback. So I know our Director of Communications is online, and she's been responding as well. So we can certainly take a look at the tone. I think that the survey is really intended to just capture whether or not any changes or modifications are required to the existing policy, and the intent would be to come back with sort of analysis of that feedback, and also sort of revisit some of the environmental scan that we did in terms of what our neighboring municipalities are doing, and then allow council to have a more fulsome discussion at that point.
Ms. Bégin, will this, if the survey's going out, will it also have a way for people to provide additional comments or a way to engage with staff so that the folks that Councillor Leahy has been engaging with can add value to that conversation and reach out to staff more directly?
Absolutely. There's contact information included. So.
Councillor Leahy.
Yes, one follow-up question through you, Madam Chair, to Ms. Bégin. So is there the opportunity still to tweak the language of the survey? And rather than suggesting possible negative aspects of it, if you're going to do that, I think we need an equally balanced suggesting some of the positive benefits of backyard chickens, or remove the negative language and just give opportunity to ask more neutral questions and an opportunity for comments to be written rather than suggesting answers is what my concern is. Thank you.
Certainly that, through you, Madam Chair, that we have the ability to modify the survey. It hasn't been published yet, so.
Councillor Carruthers.
I thought the survey was very well balanced. Question 3 talks about all the positive aspects, and question 4 talks about some of the potential downfalls. And I thought one of the things that was missing from that list was potential for animal cruelty. So backyard chickens are fantastic when people know what they're doing and they care for their chickens and they keep them neat and tidy. But there's been lots of examples where they don't. Animals suffer, other pests move in. All the things that are listed there actually happen. They're not just made up. These are potentials that we would get bylaw complaints on and that we have during the whole pigeon thing a number of years ago. So I think it's important that people keep that in mind. And when we're talking about backyard chickens, wonderful if they're well kept, lots of problems if they're not. So I'm happy with the survey the way it is, and I would only suggest that animal cruelty is listed as one of the downsides.
Thank you, Councillor Carruthers. At this point, I would like to simply leave this with staff, with the expertise that they have on communications and the expertise that they have with a regulatory framework. So should we decide to change things, staff will come to us with the appropriate regulations and bylaws that would allow for safe, quiet, appropriate hen keeping, if that's the expression for it. Councillor Crone, you have not had a chance to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can say I actually have some experience with this. We, in my own family, we raised hens for a little while, and it's a responsibility. And I looked at the survey too, and I thought initially, as you did, Councillor Leahy, I thought, ooh, might be a little negative, but you know what? After you review it and you think about it, you're trying to provide both sides of it. And so I know, we had issues with weasels as a pest. Anyway, I don't have an issue with the survey. My question was more concerned about. I know City of Toronto had experimented with this, piloted some backyard hens in much tighter quarters. There was talk, and I don't know where it went, but there was talk that they were considering abandoning the pilot because of avian flu concerns. Do you have any information on that, or I was just curious if there was any outcome of that that we may want to consider. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not aware of the results of any of that work at this time, but that can certainly form part of the recommendations when we come back in terms of sort of the risk and potential reward of analysis of this policy. So.
Something new to add, Councillor Leahy?
Yes, just one last point through you, Madam Chair, that I neglected to mention, and I would be remiss because a resident asked me specifically to bring this forward, is the fact that with inflation and with the challenges of grocery shopping, the hens, in at least one instance that I'm aware of, would be kept for the production of eggs for consumption. So they would be a food source for the family. And so I think that's an important criteria to also keep in mind.
I don't think that's lost on any of us at this point. Thank you. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Crone to receive the memorandum that staff are going to do a survey about backyard chickens. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is a memorandum regarding an update on Welland Land Development Inc. applications, and we're here just to receive it. May I have a mover? Moved by Mayor Hackson. Ms. Bégin, would you like to present this? I know we had a debutant and we had some questions earlier. I don't know if there's anything further you'd like to add at this time.
Through you, Madam Chair, not really. I think that this was in response to the council resolution that we follow up with an update on the status of the various applications. We did have an opportunity to meet with the proponent and with representatives of Sharon Temple, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I think the deputation covered off sort of the context, and we are reviewing or we're awaiting the 5th submission. I think we're close to being able to come forward with a recommendation report. And if that's not going to be possible, given sort of the situation with respect to the grant funding for the Howard House, we might suggest the proponent come forward with a presentation and speak to their request for allocation in advance of a recommendation report, depending on, just being respectful of the timing to be able to take advantage of that federal funding grant.
Thank you. Any questions? I wanted to thank Mr. Wong for staying with us all afternoon. We've only got 2 other people who've had the staying power that you have, sir. Seeing none, moved by Mayor Hackson that we are receiving the memorandum. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. Ms. Bégin, did you have anything further to raise into this area?
Nothing further this time, Madam Chair.
Members of committee, anything to bring up? Seeing none, I'll turn the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll move now to item K, Community Parks, Recreation, and Culture. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have two items on our agenda. We have the first one is the Community Parks, Recreation, and Culture Memo, Sharon Hills Pilot Practice Disc Golf Course Update. Can I have a mover for this, please? Moved by Councillor Roy DiClemente. Mr. Carmison, would you care to update us on this?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Staff's pleased to provide an update on a pilot project practice disc golf course at Sharon Hills Park. This is a project that's consistent with our guiding principles in our Health and Active Living Master Plan to support emerging sports as well as recreation activities. The practice course was designed with a local area residents and the assistance of a local area resident. And the course is receiving excellent community support and feedback. And it's also a concept or a model that could be applied to other East Gwillimbury parks within other communities. Staff are planning on hosting a demonstration event with the local area resident that helped design the course in the spring. And information about the course can be found online. And the demonstrational event will be advertised through our corporate communications staff. Happy to answer any questions related to the project.
Thank you. Any questions from committee? Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, do the baskets remain in place through the winter? So is this a 4-season sport?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to my knowledge, I believe the baskets are taken down over the course of the winter months. However, disc golf is rather new to myself and East Gwillimbury. I can verify that with staff.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. On to our second item, we have the Community Parks, Recreation, and Culture Memo, Queensville Development Phase 2 Trail Construction Update. Can I have a mover for this? Councillor Johns. Mr. Carmison, what can you tell us about this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff's pleased to provide an update based on the phased trails development construction in Queensville. The initial construction includes over 2 kilometers of trails with an investment of approximately $2 million in trails infrastructure into the community at no cost to the taxpayer and as a part of the development planning process. Our park standards do require construction of parks and trails at 50% occupancy for plans of subdivisions. However, the trails being built in Queensville have been long awaited and have been prolonged. Given this particular community and the size of the community, has 9 different phases and separate plans of subdivision. At present, the community has design submissions for 6 phases. As a result, it's taken some time to finalize housing lots, streets, parks, school blocks, the health and active living plaza site, community amenities, and the connectivity of the trails network through those respective 6 phases. In addition, land conveyance also occurs at time of plan of subdivision, registration, and agreements of plan of subdivision, which has also taken some time as well. That would feed into the duration for the project to develop the trails network. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions from committee? Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair. My question is with regard to your comment that there's no cost to taxpayers. You just stated that there's 2 kilometers of trails, it's over $2 million. I know that nothing in life is free, so can you explain, please, how it's at no cost to taxpayers?
Mr. Carmison?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as a part of the plan of subdivision agreements with the developers, the developers within that community, the conveyance of land, including the design and the construction of the trails network, is included with the development charge credit process. So there is no direct cost to the East Gwillimbury taxpayer or any impact onto the mill rate for the East Gwillimbury resident.
Thank you very much for the clarification. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. Thank you for the pictures on this of those wicked switchbacks. I looked at these and I thought of the developer who was looking at Doan in the Second and said that if people wanted a pint of milk, they could go over to Queensville. And I'm looking at this and wondering if we're going to put in a chairlift. But I want to just thank staff for these trails, and given the geography there and the amount of engineering that had to go into making this happen, I just want to say I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Roy DiClemente.
It's actually the same developer, Councillor Carruthers.
Are there any other questions?
I did want to say, through you, Mr. Chair, that I think these pictures are beautiful, and I wanted to thank staff for the beautiful design work that they've put into these.
Thank you for the comments. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, I think this is quite an undertaking. So congratulations to you and your staff for doing this. This will be a nice showpiece for the town. Given that there are no other questions, I will call the vote. All those in favor? All right, motion is carried. Mr. Karmazin, do you have anything else you'd like to share with committee at this point?
Through you, Mr. Chair, nothing further at this time. Thank you.
Does committee have anything to ask of Mr. Karmazin? Seeing none, I will pass the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Seeing nothing on the agenda for items L through N, I will move item O, other business. Is there anything to share under other business? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I have a question. The horse is already out of the barn, but it's with regard to the attached list of 74 Housing Affordability Task Force recommendations for response that was submitted to the province with the letter. And I was looking through the responses and the opposition to certain items on that list of 74 items, and I was hoping to get some clarification. Because on point, for example, there were numerous points that I wish we would have had the opportunity as a council to discuss. Because if indeed the province decides to give us money, whether or not that happens, they would be using this list of 74 housing recommendations as a basis to make decisions on. And I wanted to have confirmation from our CAO in terms of my understanding that it is the council that makes policy decisions and not, in fact, the staff with external consultants making the policy decisions. And so if this document is going to be used in the future moving forward, I would like to have an opportunity for there to be some discussion on council with regard to policy decisions in the future based on this list.
Go ahead,
Thank you,
please.
Madam Mayor. Through you, let me be very clear. The direction to staff was provided by council. So council, as I recall, directed us to work with the a staff team and the consultant to complete that survey and then to provide it back to council for information. So if I've misunderstood that direction, I would be happy, Madam Mayor, to, pardon me, for someone to sort of confirm for me what that direction was.
Well, I thank you for the follow-up. And may I follow up, Madam Mayor, so that I understand completely the process that took place. In terms of, was that direction in writing from council? Can you show me where it is in writing where we decided as a council that that would be the course of action?
Madam Mayor, perhaps it was not in writing there. I don't believe there was a resolution. And so perhaps the lesson learned is going forward, we'll make sure there is a resolution. But unless I'm wrong, and I'd be happy to stand corrected on this, I believe the direction was very clear verbally, but we'd have to go back and review, or perhaps other council members have a recollection on that. But happy to review that.
Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you. It's my understanding that the list or survey that was responded to was a piece of correspondence that was sent to the mayor and the staff team and the subject matter expert who we're paying for helped the mayor answer the survey. That document has no standing as far as policy is concerned.
Wait here.
Sorry, as I understand it, that document would have no standing as far as policy is concerned with respect to this body. It is simply the mayor responding to a survey that the province issued.
I guess I'm having a little bit of concern. I don't think this is on our agenda. Am I wrong?
Madam Mayor, it was under the other business. I felt that that was the appropriate section to ask my question. So I appreciate the clarification. I just wanted it on record that I hope in the future that if we are making policy decisions and that if they are based on this list, that there will be the opportunity for council to debate any questions that come up in relation to it. Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, just for clarity, absolutely, Councillor Leahy, you're absolutely right on. Staff would not have the authority to pass resolutions or bylaws that are required to be approved by council. So, so that would go without question. That response to the survey, as Councillor Roy DeClemente has highlighted, was a request by letter that came into the mayor. And my recollection, and again, happy to stand corrected if I'm understanding what was directed of staff, was to work with a cross-functional staff team with an external professional consultant and then confer with the mayor, have that survey responded to the ministry, and then to provide the information back to council. And I believe that's what we did.
Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you. And then I know that Councillor Carruthers also wants to speak. Perhaps for purposes of transparency, it would be helpful if under correspondence to be received, that the mayor could provide a copy of the letter so that we know what she sent, but perhaps it would be helpful from a transparency perspective if the mayor also wrote us a memo and said, hey, council, here's how I responded to the correspondence from the province. And that way, there would be full transparency to the residents as well. And we can stop the questions if people are confused about how things proceeded. Thank you.
Councillor Carruthers.
And to that, at any point in time when we receive correspondence, we can ask for it to be added to the agenda. So when that was received, the appropriate thing would have been to have it added to the agenda, and then we could have spoken to it then. That would be the best way to get on the agenda. And the CAO's asked a couple of times what our recollection is, and I just wanted to say my recollection was the same, that the discussion we had here was that this was highly technical and not something that we would have any expertise on, and we were grateful to have staff work with subject matter experts to respond on our behalf. And I know that happens quite often, that there's many things that happen. Not all the business of the town comes before the council, and when it's something that is policy specific, then it absolutely does, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Mayor. The reason I bring up the question, even though the horse is already out of the barn, and I understand the clarification that you received verbal direction to proceed the way that you did, is because I went through the list, and I think it's important that the list be publicly available and for the sake of transparency, and so that residents also understand what, in terms of opposition and support to the 74 points. And the source of my confusion is that there were several points where they specifically reference complete communities, and the answer that was given to the province has an opposition indicated to that. And part of our strategic plan, it directly contradicts our strategic plan. On page 9 of our strategic plan, it talks about, the entire page talks about building complete communities. And so I'm confused as to why we'd be opposing certain points on this list. And we did not have the opportunity to debate it, so.
Go ahead, please.
I'm just confused because my understanding is that this is a piece of correspondence that the mayor sent. It is not our position. It is not a we, it is a her. So if you're questioning her correspondence, then I would prefer that you took that up with her directly rather than having us all sit here debate a question about what's in the strategic plan and what's in the piece of correspondence that you sent to that she sent to the province. It has nothing to do with us at this time.
Go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, just for clarity, we had Mr. Ron Palmer, that I think everyone's quite familiar with, assisted us to put our official plan together. Mr. Palmer and one of his associates came in, facilitated the discussion. There was lots of discussion, lots of context. What ends up being a simple support or opposed could have been accompanied with 2 or 3 paragraphs worth of context in what-if scenarios, which might have led to what on the surface looked like a support, but then in a greater context was opposed. So without Mr. Palmer, the benefit of him going through each of those with you, what I could suggest, if it would be helpful, if there's specific items or questions on that list that you really are scratching your head to say this is just a little counterintuitive as to why this would have been either a support or opposed. I don't have any issue, Madam Mayor, with those being provided to staff, and we could perhaps either meet offline, we can have a brief discussion just to kind of provide a little more perspective or provide a little more explanation on some of those. But that was sort of how we arrived at those. It was under the guidance, direction, and facilitation of Mr. Palmer and his team, and then a cross-functional team of staff, and then we worked with the mayor to go through those, and then that was submitted. So just in terms of process and just some ideas on, if there is some further explanation required, we could do that either one-on-one, or we could do that as part of some sort of future workshop session or something like that.
I'm not seeing anyone taking up the offer at this point, but I'm sure that it's still available long after this meeting is concluded. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I would like to take Mr. Balchich up on his offer of understanding the context for the answers that were provided to the province, so that it would clarify what seems to me on the surface to be a contradiction of our strategic plan.
Madam Mayor, it'd be helpful then, perhaps we can meet separately, but you could give me an idea of what the handful of questions are that you have questions about, and then we can look at those individually.
Councillor Johns, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm just sitting here listening, and I do think that it's important to communicate that I believe that we as a council followed the process, and staff followed the process in which we laid out, and you followed the process correctly too. And I just want to say that I support this democratic process that we have at the table. I support the staff and what we're doing, and I support you, Madam Mayor. So I just wanted to say that to bring clarity to my position and not saying anything. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
Thank you, and I just want to say that I did review all 74 of the recommendations and which ones we opposed, and I don't believe it does go against our strategic plan, so I just don't want to leave that hanging out there that there's any doubt about that. I reviewed all of them, and it seems very in keeping with our strategic plan, so thank you again to staff.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay. We're almost finished our agenda.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff. Appreciate it. I know it was long, but it was a very good meeting and lots of information. Thank you very much.